What's going on, y'all? So, what's interesting is Sony's numbers came out today, but I think people just don't understand how reports work, and their knowledge on how this is very shallow. Definitely when we talk about Pony fans like D Batch, uh, J-Dub, and Nib, and all of them. They'll try to make things look good. But though they report these sales saying 75 million that's shipped, by the way, not actually sold, we see here that this is what they're saying, all-time high. Hold on. Sneeze out some bullshit after reading that. 11 billion revenue, right? All-time high, which means that there's third-party vampires, by the way. This is other people's aspect. How much this is from their first party? Not even 10%. Hell, I wouldn't even say 8, 7%. This is just a whole bunch of stuff selling on their consoles, MTX, all of that. But the funny thing is, it says driven by strong 3.8 billion in hardware sales plus other segments, right? By the way, when it comes to hardware, they don't make much profit. Walmart takes a chunk, Amazon takes a chunk, Target takes a chunk, Best Buy takes a chunk, Costco takes a chunk, AMD made the hardware, so they take a chunk. Are they making any money off of that? No. Watch this, y'all. This is about to be very interesting here. Despite the new revenue record, PlayStation's quarter three fiscal year 2024 operating margin was only 7% increase. That's what they made, a 7% increase compared to before. How do you have 11 billion revenue, which you only operated 775 million? That means their margins are low. There's people that don't understand that. Here's an example right here. In 2020, they had a 20 to 21% margin increase, right? Coming all the way over here, it's 7%. Got a 4% on quarter three in 2022. This is to show you guys how this graph works. We're going to go into also how they have a much bigger base than Microsoft, but yet somehow, let's go take a look at Microsoft. Operating income, almost 800 million. Tell me how Sony has 11 billion revenue, but their operating income was lower than Microsoft's last quarter with a much lower base. And theirs went up 12%. This says a lot about the expenses, the live service canceled, and everything else. We're going to go down into some commentary in a second, but let's think about that distance there. This is deceptive because they weren't really telling people about this, and they don't talk about this because they just want to make that number look good, which is other people's success. On top of like obviously hardware too, but you're not getting much of that because everybody's taking everything. They do, as I explained. That's nasty work. Profit margins still in the single digits despite being the best-selling console is wild. Nintendo's in there like Twilight. They're about to literally launch the Switch 2. So Switch 2 is about to take over with that for the rest of the year after they launch that. This is an easy fix, and I don't understand why Sony hasn't done this already. Simply hire the crap gamer and J-Dub City. They're kind of mocking. They have all the corporate knowledge and experience to turn this thing around. That's actually pretty funny. Got to pay those factory workers making consoles used to play third-party games. I mean, like I said, they got to do all that to get that manufactured. They're not taking much of that. That's what people don't understand about hardware. Nintendo's the only one that makes a profit because they're very smart with the way that actually works. So going down here, Sony is effing a joke of a company. According to Sony's financial reports, OI increased by almost 40% year on year. How does this correlate with the numbers you posted? What an idiot. He doesn't understand how things work. Profit margins don't really have a trend here, though. They highly fluctuate just on the nature of the business. As soon as the first party game releases, it's a huge boost in profit for PlayStation. Holiday quarters didn't really have that, which is why you see a dip. And they also canceled 10 live service games, dipshit. That's low. That means Sony has a high cost of goods sold expense, and they lost money. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. See, pathetic margins. With the release of new hardware, though, margins generally tend to go down. PS5 Pro, that's why they try to charge that much for it, but they still only had a 7% increase. This is what people don't understand. They released a Pro to have that boost as well, too. But yet, you only had a 7%. You would think by releasing a Pro, wouldn't the margins be higher? Because they're not dropping the price either, but that's not the case, right? So, and this guy says they're going to come up after you. Perfect example of why the days of subsidized hardware is coming to the end after this gen. I expect 10% margin on new consoles starting day one for PS6. Those margins are concerning. This is the stuff we need to be talking about. As I said, going back up here and taking a look at this, operating income 775. They're supposed to be making billions, at least two, right? So going over here to Microsoft, we see shift towards high margin businesses like Game Pass may have helped make the games division more profitable. So their service is doing that. Sony's Plus service is not doing that. Obviously, PC helps with that too. But this is just an example to give people the idea here. Because if you go and take a look at, for example, like, let's see, PS5 sales, this is going to be an interesting one for y'all. PlayStation has just had its biggest quarter yet, selling 9.5 million units between October and December and passed at 75 million in total. That's shipped, by the way, not actually sold to customers. You'll see this being a thing, right? And it had its highest user monthly active count at 129 million, which is pretty much matching what Nintendo has. Wait till the Switch 2 launches, though. Oof. PlayStation's vision is overperforming with record profits. No, they're not. What are we talking about here? And Sony's highest earner. Sony has raised their forecast again due to the all-time high results. Impressive console sales, including the PS5 Pro and the third-party titles, are making up for the lack of first-party titles and live service failures. Yeah, I bet. Secret anti-PlayStation 5 Discord member Jazz Corden looks for ways to spin amazing PS5 numbers to Brad Sams after he realizes Xbox is cooked and enters Hopium. Not really, bro. IGN headline, Take-Two boss unconcerned by plummeting PlayStation 5 and Xbox sales. Sony, record 9.5 million shipments not sold, by the way. That means that's what they're shipping out to everyone, not what people are actually buying. So, we get the idea here, but yet nobody's saying anything about operating. Watch, you won't see any of this. Sony has confirmed 75 million PlayStation 5s have been shipped as of December 31st, 2024. This puts Xbox Series X at 26 shipped as per below. No, it doesn't. That's a damn lie. You know what's so funny about that? Even if we go over here to VG charts, they have 32 million sold. So that means they've shipped more than that. That's a damn lie. But you know, these are pony pages, so it doesn't surprise me. But according to IGN, PS5 sales are plummeting. So, why Sony is not releasing their exclusive on Xbox? Gotcha. Negative 70%, negative 29%. That's funny that he's reporting that because they only have a 7% increase, but yet they're supposed to be selling more. They're still behind the PS4, by the way, by like 1.7 million or something like that, or whatever. The PlayStation 4 is still a little bit higher. But like I said, if we look at what all this has nothing to do with Sony's in-house, but this is everything to do with just third-party vamping, meaning everybody else's games being there, and you're just reporting what that made on your platform. Your first party's not doing anything. They don't have anything. What do they have? What, Astro Bot selling 1.5 million? You see what I mean? It's a joke to me because it's like I said, congratulations to them in my last video on selling that, and I always want console gaming to do well, so it's not bad that consoles in general are selling more. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But what I don't understand is what I like to call, I only want to take this part of a report and I want to make it look like this so that it can look positive. But we don't want to say that the operating income is only 775 million out of the 11 billion. Yeah, because most of that is other people's profit, their income. That's how much. Look, guys, it isn't even a billion. So that means they didn't even get a billion, right? So everybody else is taking that. We kind of get the idea here, right? And it makes PlayStation look better because that's what Sony does. They just move hardware and everybody else succeeds on there and they don't succeed off of their own creation and in-house. There's people that understand it. That's really how Sony's always been. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people think that people are buying a PlayStation for first party, and I tell them, you're not getting a PlayStation for first party. The average person is not. It's getting it for other people's games. And Sony's just being a hardware manufacturer selling the PlayStation and having a loyal base, and a lot of them are blind. Not for people who just enjoy it, because I own PlayStation consoles, you know what I mean, myself. But I like to give people more of the truth that people want to kind of hide so they don't see that this is what Sony gets. This is just, what's being reported as somehow record. Yeah, but if let me just give you an example. Let's say that those third-party games were not doing so well. They don't get anything, and there's no records. So it's like they're trying to report Sony doing it, but it's like, no, 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 this is what people are doing on your device. Your games are not doing that. It's other people's games and microtransactions and gambling, season pass, all that type of stuff that's going on. You know what I mean? Whereas like if you looked at a Nintendo world and they had that going, I guarantee you 80 to 90% of that is coming from their first party. Because people buy a Nintendo console for Nintendo games. People don't buy a PlayStation console for PlayStation games. It is a nice luxury to have. Don't get me wrong. Whereas, like, if you think about Sega, people would buy Sega consoles for Sega games. People would buy Xbox back in the days, not today, but back then. If you got an original Xbox, what did you get it for? For Halo. You wanted to play Halo, right? And then they had Halo 2 come online. It was the biggest thing in the world in America at that one point. Why'd you buy a 360 to play Halo and Gears? And racing games and whatever games Microsoft had, but it would their main selling point was because of their IPs. Sony is the only one in the world that doesn't do that, but they've tried to kickstart it and try to get to the 5 yard line or almost 10 yard line at the end of the PS3 era. I'm just telling people how things work here, so that we can understand these reports and really get that. And they think because that's going on that kind of makes it better than Xbox, but it's like, if you're saying that, if I want to talk about Xbox or I want to talk about PlayStation or I want to talk about Nintendo, I need to talk about what you're doing. Hardware does matter because that's your console you're not manufactured. Actually, AMD's doing that, but still, that's your console. And then what you're doing publishing and what you're doing development. So you're publishing and you're development. Now we're talking about what Sony is doing if we're talking about hardware, publishing, and development. Now we're talking about what Nintendo is doing if we're talking about hardware, publishing, and development. Because that's your name. If you're bringing up GTA and all this other stuff right here, you're talking about somebody else's stuff. I'm not saying that you having more consoles to get them more sales is not factored in, but we need to be a little bit more accurate and professional in our comparison. So if I'm comparing Xbox and PlayStation, I'm comparing Xbox first party, Xbox publishing, Xbox consoles, and also the brand because we're talking about that. You're on PC, so that counts too. So you're gonna combine and report all that in your reportings. I wish that they would make the reportings professional to say that this is what Sony did with first party and everything else, and this is what Xbox did with first party and everything else. And this is what Nintendo did with first party and everything else. And then this is what it was done total with everybody else combined. Then you would get even more of a realistic point of view. But nobody does those type of reports except Nintendo because they're so good that they're allowed to show off those numbers. Sony used to show the numbers when they were just stumping Microsoft when the Wii U had a bad situation. But when the Switch showed up, they started hiding their numbers. They did. They don't give you that full detail. They show more than Microsoft does, of course, but they don't show enough because they realize that people are going to compare it to Nintendo, and it's going to hurt their ego. But why not do it anyways? Because we find out anyways. So just do it. It would be nice to have a more full depth analysis of these type of reports. People got the numbers at Astro Bot sold 1.5 million. And guys, I have to say this. This is where I find where the PlayStation base is a little bit slow because it's like, okay, so if you're bragging so much about that Game of the Year award that Astro Bot has gotten, but yet even around that time there were 60, 64, 65 million consoles, right? What is the attachment ratio? You guys ready for this? 65 million, right? Or let's do this. 1.5 percentage of 65 million. You see what I mean? Like if you do something like that, right? So check this out, right? That means 63.5 million people, but that's not how many are actually active. That's how many they sold. So that's the hard thing. How many are actually active? How many of that 65 million are active actually bought Astro Bot? When you think about that percentage, it's very low. It's not even 1%. It's bad, right? Because 1% of 65 million, which we know that's going to be 650,000, right? Okay, so we can give it a little bit more of that, but you guys get the idea, right? That's not that impressive. You're supposed to love PlayStation, right? They're supposed to love PlayStation. Yet you're not supporting the games that you want to brag about. You're just on Twitter talking about it. You see what I'm saying? That's what I don't get. That game's supposed to be at 4 to 5 million at least by now. They're gonna be like, okay, you know what? Because I want you guys to think about this. What game of the year? Let's look at the game of the year stuff right here, right quick. Game of the year. We could just do game of the year games. Watch this real quick. Now, what's interesting about this is let's just go to the past 10 years here, right? We could find the Game Awards, right? How much did Baldur's Gate 3 sell? A lot, right? How much did Elden Ring sell? 30 million, right? Or it's getting there. It Takes Two. That even sold a whole bunch. Last of Us Part 2, come on, 10 million plus. Sekiro, millions. God of War, almost 20 million. Breath of the Wild, 30 something million. Overwatch, what, 20, 30 million? Witcher 3, 20, 30 million. Dragon Age, 10 plus million. This is the only game in the world that's supposedly supposed to be Game of the Year over Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I highly disagree with. Metaphor, I highly disagree with. Wukong, I highly disagree with. Sold over 20 something million. That only sold 1.5 million. And you got the whole Sony base sitting there trying to brag about it. Yet you didn't support the game. The game moved nothing. It did nothing for the industry because everybody already knows that it's 80% of the game is Mario. And when Mario drops, he sells 10, 15 million in a damn few months. Multiple ones. This is where I feel like it's weird because everybody knows that it's not Game of the Year. And it's like something that's off there, right? Because you could look at every other category and then you'd be like, yeah, there's something off with that. You didn't shake the industry, but barely anyone supported it. And now you're forcing the game. Watch this, y'all. Astro Bot forced PlayStation 5 bundle. They're forcing it into a bundle now. Review new PlayStation 5 bundle leaks online. They're putting Astro Bot as a bundle now to boost the vanity because they realized it commercially failed. Though some of them wanted to say that it did succeed, but if you're supposed to be Game of the Year, everybody would become supporting that. You wouldn't have to put it in a bundle because people would not want to wait. They would want to hurry up and get to the game. You can beat the game in one sitting. It's a 10-hour game. You can 100% it and get it at platinum in like 14, 15 hours. And I'm not downplaying anything. I'm just saying, what are we talking about here? So what did your first party do last year? You want to brag about Helldivers 2? Oh, no, please don't do that because 65%, almost 70% of success is on PC. Remove PC. That ain't moving no consoles. Your consoles are being moved because you're just a hardware manufacturer, not because of your games. So that's what I mean by like, if we want to talk about what you're doing, what is Sony really doing first party development wise, canceling a bunch of games compared to what Microsoft is doing first party development wise? They're losing in that department, but they're winning in the hardware department. Nintendo is totality, has complete totality, where everything they're moving is because of their first party, and they're moving the entire industry, winning Game of the Year awards, having the highest Metacritics, inspiring other developers to actually be better, and making Microsoft and Sony realize, man, first party is very important. Indie is very important. It's not about graphics. It's about really good video games. And having people all rush in and everybody starts making handles because of them. You see that type of inspiration, that move in the industry, making video game better, more colorful, more rich, that Japanese culture that you see doing that. This is what Sony does not do. Microsoft is at least trying to strengthen the Western forefront because they're an American company. That makes sense. Improve the Western forefront. Sony betrayed Japan so many times it ain't even funny. I'm looking forward to Monster Hunter, but hell, that's not defined by Sony. That's Capcom. That's also going to be on Xbox. It's going to be on a Switch 2 in the future. It's going to be on PC. You know what I mean? You could also play it on the handheld devices. But you get my thing is like you could talk to most people that have a PlayStation and I'll ask them, why do you have it? Like, oh, I want to play these type of games. And it's not going to be a Sony first party game. So that's what I kind of wanted to cover about this. Let me know what y'all think. Like, comment, subscribe. All right, y'all. Peace out.